Welcome to the Point of View Show. My name's Andrew Tran. I'm your host. This show highlights business professionals in Asia and around the world to get an understanding on what makes them effective, how they do it, and advice to help you grow in leadership, branding, marketing, and sales. For more information, head over to my website, www.andrewtran.asia. Before we get into it, smash that subscribe button and click notifications, whether or not you're listening or watching this. It helps me a ton and it helps other like-minded people find these episodes a lot easier. Now let's get on with the show. My next guest is Anita Siek. She is a speaker, educator, and brand strategist. Anita is founder and director of Wordfetti, a human-centered business strategy and word education house, which is on a mission to improve, make better business through the power of words. She has an amazing following. She's built this community over the last few years and also has one of the best business podcasts in Australia at the moment. She talks about marketing, brand strategy through Wordfetti, which is her podcast. Go check it out as well. But fun fact, she used to be a lawyer. She got admitted by the Supreme Court of Queensland. So really cool. Our chat was really, really fun. It's a long chat, but it's such a fun chat because we dive a lot into what she did in order to kind of grow her brand per se. We dived into her course making business as well, which is, I guess, one of the key things. So I'll link that in the show notes below, but it's definitely one podcast episode you definitely need to listen to. I also talk about some of the common mistakes that brands make and ask her what she thinks about that. And she provides some really great advice as well for business people out there or strategists out there looking to reframe problems that they're facing at the moment. So without further ado, give it up for Anita Siek. Anita, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
I know, me too. For those who are watching, listening, we're just kind of having a big chat just before and we're like, oh crap, we need to actually record because we're running out of time, but all is good. But Anita, thank you so much for coming onto the show. And for anyone who's watching, listening, like you are Wordfetti, like the lady, the person behind the person. Those who think they know brand strategy know nothing until we have this conversation right now. So Anita, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, feeling very humbled right now with that intro.
Yeah. Well, hey, like if anyone who's just skipped the intro that I kind of recorded just before and then just went, well, who's this? You're a brand strategist, but like something that's really kind of funny is that you used to be a lawyer, right?
Yeah. So I used to write things people don't read, actually. So it's great people read my things now.
Hey, fun fact.
Which is good.
Fun fact. I used to. My only connection to law is that I did 3 months at Clayton Utes back in the day.
Oh, did you? As an assistant?
I was a mail boy. Nah, I was a mail boy. I couldn't do that.
Yeah, right, Andrew. That's cool.
I was a marketer. I know. At the Riparian. So anyone who's watching or listening in Brisbane, you know where the Riparian building is or the Riparian Plaza.
Yes, very fancy.
Very fancy indeed. Hey, so let's start off this one really quickly. So if you weren't a marketer or brand strategist or a lawyer, what would you have done?
You know what, Andrew? That is such a good question. I'll have to be honest. If I wasn't going to be a lawyer or in marketing, I think I'd probably do something related to traveling and culture and understanding different cultures. I know we're right in the middle of COVID at the moment, so it's probably not right now, but if I could travel, I just think understanding different cultures, their history, their story is so fascinating. And of course we have books and we have years and years of literature and all of that, but being able to actually immerse myself in different cultures and being able to understand why they do what they do, like the Asian culture, the Western culture, India, like all these different cultures, I would want to do that and actually encapsulate it into whether or not it's bite-sized stories or something like that. I don't know, something related to culture.
That's cool. When was the last time you went to a museum in Brisbane?
Literally like a month ago.
Oh. But hey, like for anyone who's watching or listening, like Brisbane growing up, like back in the 90s, growing up in Brisbane wasn't really the coolest place. But I reckon over the last 10 years, they've got some really cool stuff. Like
it has, Andrew. Like when were you last in Brisbane last?
I was in Brisbane maybe a couple of years ago.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, a lot has changed even in the last 2-3 years. Like it has gotten pretty cool. Like lots of really cool pockets in terms of like even food and culture, arts. So all of that. It's starting to become a little bit of a hip spot.
I know. Is it the Goma or the Moma over
It's
there?
Goma.
Goma.
So Mona is in Tasmania.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah,
The Goma's the
which
bomb.
yeah, Goma is the bomb. I've actually got Mona on my list. I'm going there next month.
Nice. It's gonna be cold. It's gonna be
Yes,
cold.
I'm ready for it. I love the cold. Love the cold.
All right, moving on. So, like today's talk, we're going to talk about brand strategy, but I also want to dive a little bit into what you've done and your podcast as well. But firstly, as a brand strategist and you working with different brands, different individuals, strategizing, coming up with creative solutions to ideate and whatnot, what is the main mistake strategists make when it comes to their strategy?
Would you say strategists or mainly businesses?
Both.
I would probably say in the lens of businesses and organizations, the biggest mistake I see people make is they jump straight into, okay, what is like trending at the moment, or what is a cool voice we can adopt. Like that brand is really standing out, so let's look at what they're doing and see if we can mimic it. When I'm like, no. That is not like, it's, of course it's important to know like who else is in the industry. It's important to know who you're going to be up against, but that is not a way to build your growth strategy. That is not the way to build your business strategy. Looking at what someone else is doing, thinking that it works well, and then mimicking it, because you don't know exactly which audience they're targeting. You don't know what offers they've got planned up in the next 5 years, right? And that, I would definitely say that is the biggest mistake. They see what others are doing, or they think that brand is doing really well and they mimic that. Or they see that brand is launching a podcast, bam, they launch a podcast. That person's launch a course, they go launch a course. So that is not the best strategy.
Yeah, no, I see that a lot with smaller businesses, because they feel as if they can't compete and they don't have the quote unquote marketing budget to do X, Y, and Z. So they go, oh, well, let me just copy what they've done. And the problem with that is like, like you said, you don't know who they're targeting. You don't know the resources put in place. You don't even know the processes and the platforms they're using in order to service XYZ campaign,
Yep.
And it becomes a bit of a problem.
Yeah, it does. And then it's costly, very costly problem.
Exactly.
You have to go all the way back.
Yeah, exactly, man. Exactly. But with, when you create strategies for businesses, for brands itself, is there any resources you use to kind of spark that ideation internally to help your clients?
Andrew, I'm going to drop down 3 things that pop into my head when you say that. I think the first thing that I always do is I wouldn't necessarily say resources, but it's more of a thing that I do majority of the time. I literally sit down with the founder, the CEO, whoever is leading this campaign or this brand up level, business up level, and I need to be an extension of their brain. So for me to do that, it's not just about, okay, so where are we going? What are you offering? Like, where's the business going? I need to go really deep into understanding where is this business going in 5 years' time? Like, why are we actually doing the offer like this? Why did you think that this was going to be? Because they usually come with a bit of an idea as to what they might want. They're like, oh, I want a brand voice like this, or we're thinking we would be positioned in the market over here. And it's not that it's not that I'm trying to be rude, but it's almost like I want to question and actually get an understanding by asking them why they want to go down this path, and understanding as to why this is the case. And the majority of the time they think it's this, when really it's this, and they might not have actually taken the time to then speak to their audience. They're creating something based on what they think is going to work well in the market. So the first step is always getting a really deep understanding as an extension literally of their brain. of why they're doing this. If it's a business owner, that's even deeper. I want to know their personal story. I want to know why they got to where they are now. Because that's the thing too, like, especially the business owners, they don't realize that a lot of the unique selling proposition, the unique message and all of that lies in their story. Like, so much of that lies in their personal story. And it's not until we unpack that we realize, oh, the fact that you were a pilot, you were this, is actually very relevant to what you do now. Like, they don't realize that until we unpack a lot of the problems that they solved during all those different career paths to now the problems they solve for their audience, for us to now encapsulate that and position it to the market as something different. So the first bit is definitely getting to know the business or the business owner as though I'm an extension of their brain. The second bit I would definitely say is understanding their audience, because although I'm a wordsmith, although I'm writing for them, I'm actually writing for their audience. I'm actually not writing for the CEO. I'm not actually writing for this business owner, with all due respect to them, and they know this. I'm writing for their audience. Like, their audience need to resonate with what we're creating. Otherwise, we're just flushing money down the toilet. So I then get to know them. And this is through a series of focus groups, me putting together a series of questions to run. Sometimes it used to be in person, but with COVID now, a lot of it is now virtual, a lot of card sorting activities, like get into their brain. So that's the second bit. I'd probably say the third bit, where I get inspiration, ideas, and all of that. I love reading studies. Like, I love reading, like, I think it's absolutely fascinating, the fact that there's been studies conducted for over 20, 30, 40, 50 years on consumer behavior. Instead of us just going out there guessing, why are we not actually taking the time to absorb existing research that is out there to see what people are thinking, what people are saying, what people want to know, what people want to read? Like, so I absorb a lot into studies that have already been done, which is out there in the big wide web for all of us to consume. So I'd probably say these, and sometimes textbooks as well. Like, I'm just trying to see if I've got, no, I don't have any textbooks on my desk now, but textbooks I also find fascinating. So these three things would be what I really lean on when it comes to developing the strategy for a brand.
Nice. I like how you just use the word story, because especially for a business owner, understanding the story behind where they were, how they got to this point from a business perspective, then gives you a creative idea as to, like, oh, this is the angle we should try and talk about. You know what I mean?
And that gets me very excited, Andrew. Like, whenever I go into the story element of a business owner or an organization, because the thing is, you can mimic color palettes, you can mimic even offerings and products. You know, there's Uber, now there's Lyft, there's all, like, you can mimic a product offering, but the thing is, you cannot mimic a story. That is the one thing that it's very, very hard for you to mimic. So It's awesome when I get to just sit there and listen to people's stories.
You know, I use car analogies when I talk to clients, because it's like, at the end of the day, a car's a car. It has four wheels, has a steering wheel, has an engine block, and it goes, right? But then there's a clear difference between, the difference between a BMW and a Mercedes is its story. It's its heritage, it's its, reasoning why certain brands or certain people gravitate towards one or the other. And it's how they portray that story. And so when I get that and I'm able to explain that and they're able to understand, then they're like, oh, okay, cool. We're not just selling real estate. No, you're selling a dream. You're selling a property that enables a family in order to grow and make sure their children are taken care of. That's the kind of thing. And I love that. Like, when you go deep with a client coming through, and then just trying to be also realistic in terms of what they're thinking of. Like, oh, I like this, and but I like what Apple's done, but I really don't have Apple money. So let's kind of just wind back a bit. All right, cool. And let's just kind of figure out, like, how we're gonna navigate through the waters and stuff. I really like that.
Yes, you're speaking my language. Because you're 100% right. Like, a house, you're not just selling a house, you're selling that home. Or the Sunday morning pancakes at the open kitchen with the kids. If it's a family home, Monopoly, you're not selling a board game, you're selling quality family time. Yep. Jeep, it's adventure. It's that feeling, like, talking my language.
Yeah, exactly. And then, you talked, like, like the last bit. And for me, it's super important as well. And I think any brand that's like, or any, like whether or not you're a small business or a large business, like things like looking at what BCG is doing, like, you know, Boston Consulting Group's doing, or what McKinsey, some of the papers they come out, like it's actually quite relevant. Deloitte has some awesome resources that you can use, and they're free. Like you said, they're free. Even I do it. Even I read up on it, you know, especially if I'm looking for like, as I'm talking to clients here and I'm trying to get a bit of an understanding of the industry in itself. You know, the big four consultancy, they issue that for free. So it's like, why try to invent the wheel? Exactly.
Why are we trying to guess when there's studies or there's white papers and resources that are out there? And it's like, I never thought I would say this. I think back in university when I was trying to choose all the subjects or the actual degree I would do, like I actually did do economics at one stage. Now, like I actually dropped out of economics, but now that I'm finished with university, I'm like, understanding the economy is so important. Like knowing, like so much has changed, like in the last like 3 decades, like as to how we make purchases, like understanding why someone buys online, why someone buys in store, like wanting to feel, wanting to touch, wanting to smell. Like it used to all just be in person. Now everything's online, and that has created a completely different need in consumers. So yeah, like I think it's fascinating going into actually reading about the economy.
Yeah, reading about the economy, and also understand the psychology around how consumers look at purchases and how they kind of, you know, the hierarchy of needs. So how they dictate what is essential to their lives in order to live, and then what is, you know, their self-actualization. Things like that, I think is like super interesting. And it's like, you know, going back to uni, it's like first year uni type of stuff. So anyone who's watching or listening, you're in uni, these are like first year subjects. Consumer behavior is like a first year subject. You know, economics 101, first year subject. So yeah, really cool.
It applies in all the areas, especially during COVID too. We totally saw this in action. Hey, like we totally saw that in action. Like I actually remember seeing this specific advertising message from, I think either Virgin or Qantas, one of the big airlines. And because no one could fly, they were doing a lot of advertising campaigns with a toilet roll. Like, because like, but that got people's attention because, as we all know, that was really became a basic need for everyone. We were all like literally going, like starting from the ground because we couldn't go anywhere. So like understanding that, exactly to what you mentioned, Andrew, where you actually understand the different hierarchy of needs and tailoring messages and content to that. It's ever evolving.
Indeed. And I think for anyone who's watching, listening, if you're a brand strategist or you're a small business, like, there still is a purpose in terms of wider brand communication, like that wider brand piece. But then as we go through COVID, and as we're going through COVID as well, you're starting to find like, okay, this is where we can start having specific messaging tailored towards a specific event or specific situation or destination or whatnot. So, you know, for anyone who's like, oh, you know, because the first thing any business does is pull back marketing spend, which is like a knee-jerk reaction.
Yes.
And what they don't realize is like, well, the money you spent, so for every $1 you spent for marketing, it was giving you $4 in return. So if you're pulling back money, then you're really pulling back your returns, and you're quantifying the pullback as well.
Yes.
Which is really bad. So when you look at that in terms of like straight maths, people will be like, oh, okay, well, how do we use our money? Well, you just got to be smart. And this is how we do it.
Mm-hmm.
So Anita, I wanna just kind of switch it a little bit. I want to talk about your podcast. So for anyone who's watching, listening, you got to check out her podcast, Brandfetti. Is it Anita by Brandfetti? Or is it Brandfetti?
It's Brandfetti. I feel like I should trademark the idea of fetty in general, because everything I do is like just fetty related.
Yep. Confetti, Wordfetti, Brandfetti. You know.
Yeah.
You should just create like a fashion label, just like.
Maybe just for a bit of fun. You know what? I've thought there's so many things I want to do with just confetti. I feel like I've ingrained that in our audience, where I send fetty bombs. Just everything has to be related to that feeling of fun.
Yo, you're in Brisbane. You should do a collab with one of the sneaker joints and just do limited runs of just,
Ooh.
something X-Fetty, boom.
Ooh, I like it.
Charity.
I like it. I like it. Love it.
All right. So I want to talk about, so if anyone's watching, you've got this podcast, but this particular episode that you did last year, you went fully behind the scenes, super duper transparent as to how you created your course and then how that course was able to generate about 200,000 AUD in sales coming through. And I guess for me, it's like you talked about pilots, like creating a beta piloting program, right?
Yes.
And so you had to get, you got about 20 students involved and you kind of went through this is how much I kind of earned from that, blah, blah, blah. But then the thing that I'm really interested in is how did you initially get those beta students? Was it a mixture of going to your large audience? By the way, for anyone who's watching, listening, she's got a massive Instagram following audience and an even stronger email kind of audience as well. So was it a mixture of going through your community in that sense and then also going through your personal contacts in order to kind of garner that beta pilot program?
Yeah, 110% community. I did not go to any personal contacts. It was purely through community. And I think the community has always been a core focus of mine when it comes to starting Wordfetti, even as a side gig. So when I was balancing this with my corporate gig, community was so important to me, but probably out of selfishness at first because I was very lonely and I didn't know anyone. When I first started the business, I actually didn't really know anyone. So having this community of, for example, designers, of, potentially graphic designers, social media marketers, I started to build a community through that. And then there was word of mouth community, just people who really felt that they wanted more fun when it came to words and branding. They wanted to feel that, which is what Wordfetti is all about. We focus on having more fun with your words. So 100% community. And I think I might also mentioned, I think another mistake potentially that I see a lot of businesses make is they think that when a client or a potential prospect or a potential audience says no, they're like, not my client anyway. But the thing is, sometimes when someone says no, and there is a bit of an exception, but sometimes when people say no to a price for if they engage you, for example, one-on-one, when they say no, it might just simply be, well, no, not right now. Right? So it's just because you give them a proposal, you spend all this time creating a proposal and they say no, does not mean it's a straight up no, they would never work with you. And that's the thing. I've always remembered that. And I feel like it's a lesson my dad, my late father actually used to tell me, don't ever treat people with respect, but also just because someone is no doesn't mean it's a no forever. It's a no right now. So a lot of the people who ended up saying yes were people who were no. Originally they were no, I don't want to work with you. One-on-one, you're just too high in terms of pricing. So when they saw that I then offered something that was lower, but also they would still get the same result, and yes, it's a group setting, they're like, oh, this is actually what this is actually going to be what's going to help me. I also want a community too, which is what the beta program really had. We had 20 people, very intimate, and that actually resonate with them. So I would probably say literally 17 or 18 people out of that beta group were people who have originally or initially submitted a proposal I've submitted a proposal for previously, and they said no. So how you treat people who say no could also boomerang back when you potentially actually have something for them that they're like, you know what, that is actually what I want. I don't have, X amount of budget for a done for me. I actually want to learn. They actually want to learn. So that I would probably say 17 out of the 20 were that. And then there was probably 2 or 3 who were existing clients actually. So I had already done a lot. We were working together and I was telling them about this and they were like, you know what, that's great that you're already helping us with the strategy. But the thing is, we still need to know how to think right and convert beyond this, because we can't engage Anita and her team ongoing forever. Right. And I don't want them to. That is not my role. That is not sustainable either for them to actually engage us forever. It would actually be more sustainable for them to upskill someone in their staff within their team to then carry this on. So there were probably 2 or 3 people that were actually already existing clients. Yeah.
That's really cool. Did you find which channel actually was the most effective in gaining those was it like your email list, or was it your Instagram followers, or?
Yeah, it was Instagram. So
Wow.
Instagram is where, so I did 4 Instagram stories, and I didn't have a sales page. I had one email that I drafted up with what this is, how it's going to be delivered, why I'm doing it, the investment, the time investment, and how I believe this is going to add value to their business. These were literally the headings that I had on the email. I got very clear on what that was going to be. I sent that to them in one email, but it was purely through Instagram stories, and then I sent them an email.
Dude, that's so cool. That's really cool.
Well, I think I might also add too, like when it comes to community, I think people focus too much on like the vanity metrics, where it's like the followers. But the thing is, we don't realize that behind each like, behind each, it's a human. There's a human behind each of that. Like, so I actually tee off at least half an hour, almost an hour each day, voice noting, DMing back. I still am the person behind each and every single piece of content I put out at the moment. I am in the middle of potentially finding someone to help me. But I will reply to every single DM, every single voice note that is sent to me, and to build that connection. Like, and I think this is been 3-4 years. Like I'll never let that go in a way. Like people might be like, yeah, you have to outsource. No, I don't. I don't want to outsource getting to know my audience.
Yeah, I think that's so important. Like, so obviously for anyone's watching, listen, I'm based in Vietnam. So one of the big things, like you get all these like kids who come from the States, and they've got like startup money from some venture company. And, they're shining as bright as they can, because Vietnam is like all about startups, and they're all about just scale. How do we scale? And it just, as much as they're trying to think of the dollar signs to make up for whatever the investment strategy that they put forward in order to get whatever seed round funding, they lose that human connection, the humility with ability type of element. And so, I think it's so important, like really understanding who your customer audience is, and really applying that through everything from your customer service to the videos that you put out, the content that you put out, and everything. So I think that's cool.
100%. And I might even add in a bit of like a value gem, I'll call it. Like I guess I really believe in this because, okay, when people think about the marketing funnel, it looks like this. I mean, if people are listening, they might not be able to see. It looks like the kitchen funnel. So, but I actually don't believe that it looks like that. Like, I actually think it actually should look like a bow tie funnel. So when you look at a bow tie, it looks like if you focus on the people who are interested and have already said yes, that will grow your business like tenfold. Like, just focus on that one client. If it is just that one client, focus on the 2 people that are interested, instead of trying to get 10,000 people to create desire. Like, so I believe in the bow tie funnel instead of the traditional funnel.
That's cool. I believe in the design thinking funnel, which is very close to that. It's
love
that figure of 8.
Yes.
Yeah, I love it.
Yes.
Have you actually, by the way, thinking about funnels and methodologies, have you heard of See, Think, Do?
I've heard of it. I'm not as familiar with it though. Tell me a bit more about it.
Okay, so it is invented by a guy over in Google, right? And so essentially he's saying, look, like, back in the day, we used to do like AIDA model, AIDA, awareness, interest, desire, action, or a simple funnel, right? But he's saying, well, look, your customers or your prospects are in different stages of the buying cycle. Some of them are just purely in awareness, which has a completely different messaging. It's a very broad message. And then those who are further down the line of consideration now, and they want more information, especially if you're in the B2B element, like they want a bit more details because they have to crunch the numbers. They have to make sure the CFO, is committed to it. There's forecasts, all that kind of stuff. And then the See, Think, Do. So when they start doing, they commit to it. And then that's that height, I guess. If you think of a bell curve, it's the height of that bell curve where they're like, all right, we're committed. We're going to sign this contract. It's not a quick buy. This is like a legitimate, like this is a $500,000, $1 million type of contract. You know, there's a lot of compliance driven, a lot of legal involved in making sure that, you know, everything that we're asking for is being delivered and XYZ like dollar amounts have been paid for. And then there's the coddle, which is like a new bit that's added afterwards. So it's like after they've bought, what is that, you know, what does that journey look like afterwards? So how do we make sure like they don't just dip straight down so how do we guide them like just floating through? And then as you have campaigns, as you have like larger brand awareness type pieces, then it does a bit of a ephemeral spike, I guess, coming through. So yeah, so that's the see, think, do model. It's kind of cool if you have a bell curve and then you just kind of put over see, think, do. It actually makes so much sense when you start kind of talking about that. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Ooh. See, I love all of these like different types of frameworks and methodologies that a lot of people have just crafted. Amazing. Thank you.
No worries. All right. Well, so you got your 20 students, you went through the community to get those 20 students.
Yep.
How long did it take? Because I know, by the way, for anyone's watching, listening, I will put the actual podcast episode in the show notes so you know exactly which podcast we're talking about. But when you go through that and you've got your 20 students, how long did it take you to then kind of create that pilot course in the first place?
Yeah. So I guess when I put it out there through the Instagram stories, that was in a way for me to validate it, because I had an idea as to what I wanted to create. I've been talking to people, I was talking to my audience, but the thing is, you still need to validate. People need to put their money towards it for me to actually realize like that this is actually something that's viable, something that people want. So I was testing this idea. There was a few times that I actually tested even different Instagram story messages. I would say this, and then I would say this, and then people would DM me after I say this. So in between the time I put out the message where I tried to validate the idea to the time I actually then went off to create, I'd probably say it was roughly just under 2 months, like a month and a half. Yeah.
But
the thing is, or pretty much, I wrote off for a month and a bit. As soon as the 20 people committed, I was like, oh, okay, need to create this because people have said yes. And the thing is, I do want to hash the fact that I did have an outline. So I did have a rough idea of how I wanted to carry this out. In the email I would have sent through to everyone, I was clear on the outline, but of course I didn't say lesson 1 was going to be this, module 1 was going to be this. I knew what the outcome was going to be. I knew what I wanted them to achieve intention wise. And I wanted them to learn how to think, write, and convert like a copywriter, even if they're non-writers. That was my main goal in my head, my intention for this program. And I knew also that I wanted to go through our specific methodology, which goes into the consumer psychology, the human-centered design, which is an element of design thinking, and of course, words. So I infused these 3 ingredients pretty much together to have developed our own framework here at Wordfetti to help brands stand out through words. But I had these outcomes, but I didn't exactly know, like I hadn't yet recorded the videos. I hadn't yet created the actual, slides and workbook to go with it. So for this beta round, it was I'm actually so glad it worked out the way that it did, because I actually mentioned this on my podcast. I actually initially had my wedding scheduled for the end of, so I was going to do this right after my wedding. And I would have given myself maybe a month to do this. But because COVID happened, so my wedding was scheduled at the end of March, and I started to put these messages out there at the beginning of March. I was going to go in the middle of March, and that was when everything shut down. I gave myself an extra 3 weeks, which was great, which was really good. I'm really I feel like the universe just knew I needed that extra time, because I'm so glad I gave myself that extra time. That gave me a chance to also connect with the designer to then bring some of my slides and workbook to life, which we've now refined even further. But yeah, I teed off a month and a half, pretty much just under 2 months to create this program. And people also knew, of course, so we didn't start until May. Like,
Cool.
so people said yes in March. We didn't start until almost, I think it was the end of May.
Whoa. So you went, all right, I'm going to go to the market. I'm going to go to my community to see how many people will be interested, to validate my ideas.
Yes.
You go, hey, put the money into the PayPal account. You're locked in. You're going to be my student. I'm not sure if it's PayPal, by the way. People watching, listening, I don't know if it's PayPal.
Well, yeah, one of them. Yeah, PayPal, Stripe.
One of them. Yeah. And then it's like, all right, cool. You got your 20. You're like, holy crap! I've got revenue. All right, now it's like game on. I've got to try and get this all sorted. I'm working to the bone for the next month and a half to kind of create these models, and then you put it into practice coming through. Yeah. Okay. Cool. And then and then afterwards you're like, all right, cool. I've figured out who my beta is. I've gone through the beta course, and then you decided to like tweak a couple of things. I know in the podcast you kind of mentioned about the modules, how you had them individual, and then part of things you put them all together like in one thick document.
Yeah. And that was the power of beta. And this is why I truly believe in the power of beta, because I was able to, and my goal was always 20, because I wanted to really understand each and every single one of the beta students that would be part of this, and also be able to ask them like really open, raw, like don't sugarcoat it. I want to know the good, bad, and ugly feedback. And one of them was, Anita, like having all of these different worksheets in different areas was very confusing, because I host it on Kajabi. And this would just be 5 worksheets on one lesson, 5 worksheets. And it was very confusing. And I didn't realize that when I was creating it. So then next round, when I officially launched, I had a full workbook that people could print out in the one go. It's almost like their Bible. It's 80 pages with all of our formulas, all of our templates. And that in itself, then people they're like, this is like my Bible, instead of like all these worksheets all over the place. But that is the power of beta, because you're now able to craft and refine your program, your offer to your audience and their needs. And I think that's the one lesson, whether or not you're creating a course, whether or not you're creating a product or a new service offering, like it's never done. Because consumer wise, like what our needs and desires are, like they change all the time. And I think one thing that organizations and business owners roadblock on is they don't want to put something out there because they're like, oh, it's not done yet, like, or it's not perfect yet. But the thing is, it's never done. Like, that's why brands go through rebrands. That's why brands go through, up levels in terms of, or create new offerings, because the demand changes or different things change. Are you going to hold it back for that reason? No, you're going to put it out there and you're just going to consistently refine. So
nice.
Yes.
Nice. Hey, really quickly. So you hosted it by yourself. You used Kajabi as a way to host it all. Did you ever consider using like educational marketplaces like Udemy or Skillshare?
Not really. And I guess the reason why is because I really wanted to create something that almost became like a central brand asset by Wordfetti, like something that we could really envelope under the Wordfetti banner, and we could consistently refine. When, I guess this is my personal opinion, I feel like when you start to lean on, like, I think Skillshare was one of them that you shared, like there is the ability to, then you're really collabing with this other brand, right? You're collabing with this other brand to also lean on their community to then buy into your program. And sometimes that, could also diminish your brand in itself, is what I believe. So I personally wanted to make sure that we were able to be clear in our messaging and our brand vibe, instead of leaning in on something like Skillshare. Not to say that it doesn't work, but I guess when I was first thinking about it, I was like, no, I really, really think we've got something here, and I really want to test it.
Yeah, I also think because you've already built, and it goes back to what you said earlier with regards to building that community, spending that time to build that community, because you've done all that hard work. You didn't necessarily need to lean on a large marketplace community like Skillshare or Udemy. in order to tap in to their audience. And then, in a way, by doing that, you're also watering down your product, because they also do fluctuations with prices, and you don't necessarily control that as well. No. So yeah, I get it. I get it. That's cool.
Yeah.
If you were to go back though and redo it, so now we're in 2021, would there be one or two things you'll do differently?
Yeah, I think the first, probably two things in my mind. I'd probably say the first thing so with my first official launch, which is what the podcast episode was about, I didn't actually really do too much of a lead gen activity. So I really just focused on my existing community. I didn't really go out there and invest too much money. I think we only spent $1,200 on ads, like on Facebook ads. We really just looked after our existing community. And I think as a challenge for example, I'm about to embark on a next launch, but I'll probably say by the end of the year, my goal is to really focus more on strategic lead generating for now this online program, where have some fun with it as well. But I definitely think I really want to test from creating a tiny offer, just more qualified, warm audiences who have already potentially seen what we're about to create. And instead of us just casting the net out there to everyone and every single person, being more strategic with, it might be less, it might be only let's just say 1,000 people that might say yes to a particular offer, but 1,000 people who say yes to an offer where they might have to put in some money for, which is what I'm thinking, versus 10,000 people where only maybe 100 people would actually end up buying, because so many people opt in for free offers too, right? And I guess what I really want to try and test next round is actually creating a bit of a tiny offer, which is a low dollar entry into investing into something. Because when you invest in something, you show up as well. So a lower dollar entry, and then we've got a more smaller lead gen, but more qualified audience who start to see and believe in the value that we bring as well. And if they want to join, they can join. And if not, then they will still get epic value. So that is one thing I want to really focus on this year, which is just lead generating. And I think secondly, I definitely want to potentially, by the time, I'm not too sure when the podcast episode might be launched, but by the time this is launched, I feel like I've gone through maybe 2 or 3 live launches. I feel like I'd love to be able to speak to my, all of the different audiences and take the time to actually speak to them and get an understanding of, okay, now it's been a year and a bit now since I first launched this. I want to get an understanding again as to what the blocks are, if there's a pattern. Maybe I'll actually rejig some of the modules itself. Maybe I will include or add in or refine again a certain module because maybe it was confusing to someone. So that would be the next thing that I would want to do. I think the first time that I was able to do it, it was only for 20 people when I was able to do this exercise. So now that I feel like I've got 2 or 3 rounds of people that have joined it, I want to get a mix of different feedback on what they think the program is and where their blocks are, so I can better it.
Interesting. That's cool. You're looking at different levels from a lower price point to a more premium price point. And when I talk to other people who have gone down the route of starting their courses through those marketplaces like Skillshare or Udemy, they started at a low price point because they need to get traction into the market. Yeah. And then they'll go, all right, well, I'm going to try. Then they find out there's a problem because of information. They can't necessarily capture email addresses. So now they're like, oh, how do I pull them back to my environment so that then I can offer something a bit more premium with a bit more details, blah, blah, blah. But you've gone the opposite, which is cool, because you've went, hey, this is super premium. This is the price point. If you can't afford it, that's, you just can't afford it. That's fine. Yeah. But we also have, we have this particular price point, which will enable you to do this and solve these particular problems.
Yes. Yep. Exactly that. And that's exactly what I'm thinking and planning, because I think, Wordfetti or Words is a premium program. It is our signature program. However, I'm also appreciative and also respectful of the fact that it might still be outside of someone's budget, right? But I still want to be, there's still different pockets of pain points, exactly as what you mentioned, that I still could solve. And we just need to pick one. Just pick one of them. Maybe it could be captions. Maybe it could be, creating a lead generator email sequence. I've got a few ideas running around, but you could literally give them that one thing so that they've gotten a lead generator that works on autopilot that fixes that problem because they want a lead generating system. So yeah, totally. That's exactly what I'm thinking.
Nice. All right, we're wrapping up. So I want to ask you, I ask all my guests this question when it comes to advice time. So for yourself, Anita, if you had to provide advice to a C-level or C-suite or even a strategist when it comes to reframing challenges that they're facing, what kind of advice would you give them?
That is such a good question. I would probably say the first thing that comes into my head is, I think nowadays, and I've seen this happen too when I was in my corporate job, I think whether or not you're a C-suite or you're an executive level, you jump straight into fixing. Like, oh my gosh, global pandemic, fix, or we jump in and we think about all the ideas, right? Like we go in ideas overload. Whereas I would probably say for us to reshape, or I think you mentioned, how can we reframe a challenge, is what if it was just one idea from different angles? Like instead of thinking of all of these different ideas and, shiny object syndrome or go straight to fixing, why don't we actually pause and actually consider, well, what is actually, instead of putting a Band-Aid on, what is actually causing that cut? What is actually the root of that issue that's happening? And what if it was less about all the ideas and it was just about one idea, but looking at it from completely different angles and perspectives? Because sometimes too many ideas is like overload as well. If only we could just pause for a moment, actually consider the root cause instead of just putting a Band-Aid over it. And then 4 months later, the issue arises again. If we just took that time to pause and slow down, slow down, because we just rush into fixing, right? Slow down and actually considered what the root cause was. Not only will you save money, but you'll also be able to potentially generate like more powerful solutions by just looking at one idea. That would be my advice or tip.
Nice. And it goes back to what you said at the beginning of this podcast, which is when you talk to clients, you ask them why. Why do you want to solve it this way? Why did you come up with this particular solution? And so by going backwards and understanding why, then you're able to kind of see, well, is that really the problem that they're trying to solve? Is this said quote solution the problem you're trying to solve? No, well, let's break it down. Why is that the case? And then you keep breaking it down. And then you eventually you're able to get to that problem.
Yeah, bang on. Because a lot of the time I think like we think that the problem is this, but then really maybe we think that, it's always been done that way, so we have to do it that way. But is that actually, what is the cost of inaction if we just kept on going that way? That is the easy route. So we really just took the time, exactly like you mentioned, to actually consider why, the root cause, could actually save money and time.
Exactly. All right. So Anita, for anyone who is watching or listening, who wants to get in touch with you, what are the best channels to get in touch with you by?
Yes, I would love to e-connect. So you could find me on LinkedIn, which is Anita Siek, ANITASIEK. And Instagram, I hang out a lot on Instagram. And that is on both Wordfetti, WORDFETTI, and also my name as well. So there's 2 accounts, and website anitasiek.com and wordfettigroup.com. Nice.
For anyone's watching, listening, it's going to be on the show notes below. So don't worry about it. If you're like, oh my God, I'm scribbling it down, I just don't know. It's in the show notes. Don't worry about it. All right. Anita, thank you so much for coming onto the show. And for everyone's watching and listening, thank you so much. And I'll see you on the next episode.